Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, as part of the Serverless Saturday series, we'll be going over the concept of serverless computing. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video, and of course, if you do, and you want to see more videos just like this one, please do consider hitting that like and subscribe button as it really helps out the channel an incredible amount. So in this video, we'll actually be covering a few topics related to serverless, including an intro to the concept of serverless, both the benefits and downsides of serverless, a brief discussion of functions as a service, some potential serverless use cases, and we'll end by going over a few serverless providers so you can start building serverless applications right away. So to begin with the main idea of serverless, which is contrary to what the term actually suggests, it's important to know that serverless doesn't actually mean there are no servers. Instead, it just means that you and I as developers don't need to worry about the servers or infrastructure behind it because that's all managed and maintained by the cloud providers. As developers, we just need to write the code and handle any business logic. Now you might ask, why would we want to follow a serverless architecture? As mentioned just now, a huge benefit of the serverless approach is that it allows you to reduce development time because you don't need to worry about managing the infrastructure that will be running your code. Cloud providers also bill you on a pay for what you use model for serverless applications, which could greatly reduce your costs because now you don't need to pay for any idling state where your code isn't being executed. You will only be charged for when your code is actually triggered. And again, because the cloud provider manages the actual servers, the provider will also help your service application automatically scale with demand. For instance, if you're running an online flower shop website and you're approaching Valentine's Day, then a serverless approach could be a great option for you to keep the backend of your online store running because you'll likely have a surge of traffic on Valentine's Day, which you'll need to support. But for the rest of the year, there'll probably be less traffic, and hence your code would be executed less. And just to tie everything together with the last point, because we no longer need to worry about servers, we can just focus on writing great code, which ultimately allows us as developers to deliver quick releases and new features. But of course, there are also a few key downsides of serverless, starting with the fact that it's not exactly vendor agnostic. What that means is that once you deploy your serverless application with one cloud provider, it may be difficult to migrate to the application to a different cloud provider. This is because each cloud vendor or provider handles serverless functions differently, and depending on the other cloud resources your serverless architecture is leveraging, some resources may not be supported, or you may even need to reconfigure all the components if you're doing a vendor migration, for example. And on top of that, if your application requires you to store state, then you might want to reconsider using a serverless approach. Of course, there are options to circumvent this, such as using a serverless database, but again, that'll just build more on the first point, making your application more reliant on a single cloud provider. Also, serverless applications may potentially be more difficult to test, as it's hard to replicate a cloud environment locally. And the last point is more of a general concern as there are simple workarounds to it. But serverless applications by default are subject to cold starts. And what this means is that if your code hasn't been executed for a while, then the container that holds your code will essentially shut down. And let's say after 30 minutes, you suddenly receive a request, then it'll actually take a moment for the cloud provider to start the container with your code before anything actually gets executed. Now that we've covered the benefits and disadvantages of serverless, I just want to quickly go over a term you might hear when reading about serverless, and that's functions as a service. This is really the core of serverless, as it allows you to write the code and implement any business logic. As the name suggests, the code you write will literally be a function or set of functions that the cloud provider will run. The functions are typically triggered based on various events or scheduled tasks, such as receiving a web request, getting a file upload, data processing, etc. And this brings us nicely into some potential applications of the serverless approach. And so adding on to the ones we just mentioned, if you want to just host a static website, set up an image or video processing pipeline, or send customer notifications, then you'll find that a serverless approach quite naturally allows you to easily build your application. And finally, just to go over a couple of options out there for writing your first serverless function. Now, the three largest cloud providers are AWS, which offers AWS Lambda, Microsoft Azure, which offers Azure Functions, and Google Cloud Platform, which has Cloud Functions. There are also many other serverless options such as IBM Cloud Functions, Netlify Functions, or Vercel's serverless functions. And if you're actually curious, Netlify and Vercel actually uses AWS Lambda underneath its serverless functions. And personally, I have more experience with AWS Lambda, so I am slightly biased towards it. But let me know in the comments below whether you think serverless is the way to go for your next application. And hopefully this video has provided you with enough insight on both the benefits and downsides of serverless. Of course, if you learned something or found this video helpful, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button down below, as it really helps out the channel and the series. And as always, I hope you're all staying happy and well out there. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.